We live in a day and time where you could make money doing just about anything. And many people I know, they want more freedom in their life. They want more time to do the things that they truly love. But many just don't know how to do that. And so I have a great opportunity to bring to you one of my coaches who has helped me to learn how to turn my wisdom into wealth to create an online education business. And so if you have any interest in turning your skills, your expertise into opportunity for yourself to create the income that you desire so that you can live the life that you crave, well, this is the episode that you definitely want to tune into. Welcome to Maximize Your Brand podcast. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another live episode of the Maximize Your Brand podcast. So excited that you're with us again this week because I have a great episode that you definitely want to tune into. It's not often that I have an opportunity to interview someone who I have invested in myself to have coach me, but today is one of those special days where I get to interview one of my coaches and talk to him about his program, about how he has created a level of success for himself. But more intentionally, we're going to be talking about how do you turn your wisdom into wealth and create a thriving online education business? I most recently just went through one of his programs and gained a lot of great information as well as education on how I can take my business to the next level because I have this earnest desire to create more of an online based business so that I can continue to have more freedom in my life to do the things that I truly love and have passion for. And so this episode, we're going to be interviewing one of my coaches by the name of John Meese. And I'm not even going to take the time out to do a whole formal introduction because I'm going to let him share more about himself and how he shows up in the world. So let's go ahead and bring him into the room. What's going on, John? How are you
Markeith.
today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I always let all my guests give some level of introduction about themselves and how they show up in the world. So take it away.
Okay, sure. Well, I've enjoyed getting to know you over the last few months working together, Markeith, in my program. So what I do is I help, as Markeith said, I help smart professionals turn their wisdom into wealth. And so I'm really passionate about that, about taking what you've learned in terms of the life lessons that you just picking up every day, and you may not even realize there are people out there who would pay for that, and then turning those into scalable digital products. Typically, that's some sort of group coaching or mastermind program, a book, or a course. And I myself am an author of a couple books, Survive and Thrive, How to Build a Profitable Business in Any Economy, including this one, as well as Always Be Teaching, which is an illustrated book on how to grow your business by creating content online. And so that's a bit about me professionally. And then personally, I'm also happily married to my high school crush. I can't say high school sweetheart because it took me 6 years to tell her I liked her, but it worked out. We've been married about just shy of 10 years and we've got 4 kids. So very rich, very full life. And my online education business is really what fuels our entire life to allow my family and I to live anywhere in the world. We just got back from 9 months in Puerto Rico and we're planning our next trip. So that's a bit about me.
I love, because, one of the things that stood out most to me when we first started the coaching program was you sharing that you were living in Puerto Rico and just kind of had took your family with you as well, and you all had just relocated. I know that you originally from the Franklin, Tennessee area
Mm-hmm.
and you decided to move to Puerto Rico. And that was just something that made a light bulb go off for me. One, because I've always, since I've been along this entrepreneurial journey, wanted to create that type of lifestyle where no matter where I decided to live, that I still had the ability to create
Mm-hmm.
income. Why was that move an important move for you, or why did you decide to move to Puerto Rico versus continuing to stay in Franklin?
Yeah, well, having grown up in Tennessee, I mean, the easiest place to stay is just where you're at, and so that was kind of my default for a long period of time. Even once I was full-time working for myself, my, quote, "laptop lifestyle" was very boring. It looked like Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, I would go into the office and work, and, I do appreciate routine, especially with little kids, like, that's really important for me to protect my focus time and then protect my home time. But I mean, my wife and I kept saying, you know what, like we could live anywhere in the world. Like, is this the choice we're making right now? And so we decided to start exploring kind of other places, and we fell in love
Mhm.
with Puerto Rico. Bought a house there. Still, right now, have a house and two cars in Puerto Rico. I don't have either a house or two cars in Tennessee. That's a whole other story. But I am renting a house in Tennessee, and I currently have an office walking distance from my house. If you're watching the video, you may see one of the downsides to living this wonderful nomad lifestyle I'm talking about is I don't have any fancy studios or anything like that. I mean, I moved into this office a couple days ago, got internet installed 2 hours ago, and then I'm here on this interview. So, but yeah, I can take my business with me anywhere in the world, and um, that's both exciting and also kind of overwhelming because it means there's a lot of
Mm,
choices. But it's really important, I think, for us to be able to show our kids the world. We wanted them to have a global
yeah,
perspective. I have four boys, and I want them to, just see the world as bigger than their backyard. And so we're still continuing that journey.
yeah. That's so good, so good. Love that story and love, the opportunity to learn more about that. And so when we talk about this whole concept of turning wisdom into wealth, because I just want to jump right in. I've
Yeah,
been a freelance quote unquote entrepreneur for full time for the last 5 years. I can't believe it, but I have for the last 5 years.
congratulations.
But I built that mainly more in a service based type of business where there were times where I did have to show up physically to do certain things. And like I said, one of my main interests in taking your program was that you were living the lifestyle that I desire to live. And one of my former coaches always said that when you find a coach or hire a coach, you want to make sure that they're living a life that you would like to live on the level that you want to live it on and the way that you would like to live it. And
I
so
love that.
when I learned about you and learned what you were doing, I was like, that's exactly what I want to create. I want to create a location free business. And currently, I don't have that. And so,
Mhm.
talk to us a little bit about why that was important for you to be able to create a location free business.
Yeah, I mean, I think of when I think of the freedom that an online education business provides you, then it typically comes in three forms, and so it's usually a combo deal of some kind.
Mhm.
It's the freedom to work when you want, where you want, on whatever you want,
Yeah.
and that's really the freedom that it makes possible. That was really important to me. I mean, I think I come from a very poor family. I mean, like,
Mhm.
we didn't have a lot of money. Our house was falling apart. We flushed the toilet with a bucket of water. We were always My parents were always stressed about, whatever bill, groceries. I paid for my own wisdom teeth surgery when I was like 16. Like I just that like I come from this background of like that's so much of my backstory. And so going into the business, I mean, I started looking pretty quickly at entrepreneurship as this path to break out of generational poverty. I mean, that's really I see entrepreneurship as a general category as the best way to break out of generational poverty. And that was good. And I stepped in that. I built a I built a software company, I built a co-working space company, I built a coaching company. Um, but I realized that selling my time, which most of the things I was doing were something related, there was still a
Right.
heavy time investment, or there were things outside of my control. Like in
Yeah.
the software company, I'm not actually a developer, so I was just
Mhm.
relying on my business partner. Like there was always things that were outside of my control, and that made me really uncomfortable. I mean, candidly, just because of my background, where I come from, and that's when I really fell in love with this idea of creating products. Like you said,
Mhm.
services is like one category of how to take what you know and make money online, and it's a good, honorable way to earn a living.
Right.
But there's limits to it built into it, and you're kind of trapped. Even when you have good clients, you're kind of trapped by that. Like you have to show up and do the work all the time.
Mhm.
And I'm not afraid of hard work, but I just felt like it wasn't the best way to provide for my family and be
Mhm.
present for them. And so that's when I started going down this route of really like trying to understand products. And I mean, candidly, like it wasn't like an overnight switch. I was doing both for a while. I was a fractional chief marketing officer for several different companies while growing my group coaching program, launching courses and memberships. My first course launch, though, was back in 2014. And that was when I first got really hooked on this whole idea because I sort of stumbled into the course world, didn't really know what I was doing, but I'm a really good student. And so I was watching what other people were doing, and I was basically just learning from them and taking those templates and frameworks and use them myself. And so
Right.
my little tiny list of 247 email subscribers at the time, I made $10,500 in 10 days for my first course launch and was like, what? Just
Stop
what?
it,
Just,
John. Stop right there.
yeah.
That is so interesting that you said you had 247 people on your email list. That is the exact number I have right now.
Are you serious?
It is
Oh, wow.
247 on my email list. So I guess I need to launch a course and send it out so I can make my 10
Apparently.
grand.
Yes, no, in 2014, I actually built that list. It was a brand new email list. Like I didn't have a lot of history with these people.
Mm,
It was targeted. I was very focused on
mm,
finding problems these people had and creating solutions to that. And that's really the core of everything I do is
yeah,
saying, how can you create real solutions to real problems for real people? In the form of an education business, that's often a course or a coaching program or a membership that helps solve a real problem. But
right.
there has to be a real problem to solve. I mean, you've obviously heard me talk about this, Markeith, for months
Yes.
now, but like you have to dive into like that. What is that problem? And then create a promise. That's really what you're selling, a product, especially not an education product, but in some ways this is true for all products.
Hmm.
It's simply a promise for a price. And so you have to get clear on like
Promise
what
for a
is the
price.
promise? Yeah, what is the promise of that product? Because that's really what people are buying. When you buy one of my books, you're not buying 200 pages of black and white ink on a off-white piece of paper. You're buying the promise, which for like my first book, Survive and Thrive, is how to build a profitable business in any economy, including this one. That's the promise. And that's what people are buying. And so you've got to get clear first on what problem are you solving, what promise can you offer to people, and then of course you have to deliver. Um, but yeah, I first got hooked on that in 2014, and then it took me a while to figure out how the business model works. But I've been doing this full time for years now, and it's been amazing for myself and my family.
I think that's the next book I need to read. I believe I got that book for
Probably.
free in your program. I
Yes,
need
I think I
to
gave you a copy. Yeah.
go back and revisit that. And so that's great. I know many people are listening and saying, is that for me? Is this a millennial thing? Is this a
Mm.
Gen Z thing? I saw a post today where someone was riding in a car. I think it was a YouTuber, and they're riding in an Uber, and the Uber driver was saying, "Yeah, those baby boomers and Gen Xers, I know they're mad because the Gen Z has figured out a way how to not do a 9 to 5, right?" Well, it's not just for Gen Z. It's not just
Yeah.
for millennials. As a matter of fact, when you think about experience and skill, I would say that Gen Xers would be prime for something like this, and even baby boomers, because of all of the experience and
Yep.
skill and expertise they have developed over the years. They just don't know maybe how to work the technology. So, what are your thoughts around that? Is this just for the young people?
I'm glad you brought this up. I'm glad you brought this up. No offense to the young people. I'm not that old myself. I am a millennial. I'm 32 as of right now. Um, so I'm fairly young in, I don't know, any metric other than maybe internet years since I've been doing this business for a decade.
Right.
Um, but honestly, I don't think we need another 17-year-old TikToker, like doing dance videos on the beach or doing slime videos or prank videos. Like, that's fun. That's fine. I'm not like offended by that. But I think so much energy in the online education space goes on helping like young people launch courses and
Mhm.
masterminds and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of, I honestly think it's a waste, but I also think it's disrespectful to our elders and the fact that there are
Mm.
people who have spent decades building their expertise in their field and they just don't know how to sell it online. And so
Yeah.
a lot of my focus honestly is helping people who have at least a decade of experience in the industry, often multiple decades.
Mhm.
Many of my clients, this isn't exclusive, but many of my clients are actually retiring into an online education business.
Mm.
And so they've worked some sort of career as a financial advisor or as an attorney or as a therapist or whatever that might be for, 30, 40 years. and they're not excited about just kind of twiddling their thumbs, but they're also done with that chapter of their life.
Yeah.
In fact, the U.S. Social Security Association released a study quietly. They didn't announce this, but they released a study a few years ago that, on average, I want to make sure I don't misquote it. Um, but the I won't quote the exact numbers because I don't want to misquote it. But the thesis of it was that they found out the sooner you retire, the sooner you die.
Mm.
That essentially, once you lose purpose and meaning, your life starts to wind down. And so in some cases, they saw whole demographics that were dying within 5 years of official retirement. And that was
Yeah.
just like terrifying because like our whole society is kind of built on this whole, rainbow at the end, this like pot of gold at the end of the rainbow of go retire. But it's a trap. It's poison.
Yeah.
And so what I love is saying like, no, let's design a business that fuels your life, that use your expertise, is something that you can find purpose and meaning from, and fund your lifestyle that you can keep doing forever. And
Mhm.
so, yes, my favorite clients are the ones who've already spent a decade or longer in their industry and they've already learned things. Usually it's behind closed doors, maybe working one on one with clients, maybe in a full time job. And now they're saying, okay, how can I take this and teach this online?
Right.
To a broader audience, and that gets me excited because it means, honestly, I think we're building a wiser world when we do that.
Mhm. Yeah.
There's a
Wiser
yeah,
world as well as creating opportunity where those of us who may have not planned the best for retirement, here's an opportunity where you could still have your retirement
that's true.
and create income, because there are people in this world who get to the retirement age and they can't retire because of inflation or
Yeah,
whatever what the situation is. But is there something that you can do that doesn't feel like work and still create income and bring it to your house? And so let's just hop right on in there. What are some of the key steps that one needs to think about and start taking in order to turn the wisdom into wealth? How do I take all this
yeah,
experience and get on this path?
yeah. So the first thing you have to do is you have to get clear on who are the real people that you're serving. Who are those people out there, whether it's like Gen X corporate professionals, or whether it's millennial moms, or whether it's retiring entrepreneurs, or whether it's whatever, that you have to first pick a people group, and these have to be real people that that you know, some real life human beings who are in this demographic that you can get to know, spend time with, and you have to get clear on like what are the problems that they have in their life and how can you help them solve that. Now that's like, obviously that's kind of like big picture. You got to start there, but I have to say it because so many people miss that. I mean, I've worked with clients who are really struggling to sell, and then we start unpacking it a little bit. And I'm like, okay, well, here's your target customer base. Your target customer base are small business owners. It's a real life story. Small business owners who've been running their business for at least 15 years, and they
Hmm.
want to learn how to maximize the value of their business that one day they can sell it. And then I started digging in. I'm like, okay, why is this person that I'm working with having trouble actually selling a program to this specific target demographic? And I asked him, I was like, okay, well, let's pull out your phone and just like let's pull up a couple of small business owners. And he was like, oh, I don't know any small business owners. And I said, excuse me? He said, I don't know any of them. I don't know any small business owners. I don't have any in my circle. I'm like, okay, well, that's why we're not selling, because if you have to tap into your human ability of empathy, which comes from getting to know real life people and solving their problems. But
Yeah.
so that's the first thing. But then I think it's a matter of designing transformational products. I could talk if you want about specific the types of products.
Mhm.
Um, we could go down that path, or just like how to start maybe, and in selling that. What do
Yeah.
you think?
Well, I think let's stay here for a second
Okay.
because I think that this part that you're talking about has something to do with mindset as well,
Mm-hmm. That's true.
right? And because I was that person to some degree where, when being challenged around, well, who's in my current sphere, who's in my current LinkedIn or familial or friends or colleagues that would be interested in learning how to leverage and create a profitable personal brand so that they can create the life that they crave and start their own online based business. I was going through my head like, I don't know that I know anybody who really wants to do it. I've been in business 5 years, and none of these quote unquote people who I know personally have ever opted in to do anything. And so, how do we get past this mindset piece in order
Mhm.
to take those steps?
Well, sometimes the answer is just go to them. I mean, like, I don't think it's a crime or immoral if you don't have those people in your contacts.
Mhm,
Sometimes you do, and you just like don't see it because you're just so close to it that you don't see your target customer in your friend group. Um, but I mean, I think the next question is, okay, well, where do they hang out? Where are they
mhm,
currently going to solve this problem? My first course launch that I told you about, I built that email list almost exclusively because I was creating a course on how to use a specific WordPress theme. It was super complicated. It was very technical. And I went to the WordPress theme support forums for that specific software and I just started answering questions. And then I would say, like, oh, if this is helpful, I'm building a new course, click here to join the waiting list. That's
mhm.
how I built that email list. And
Wow.
so I went to where the people were. If you going back to the example I mentioned before, like if that gentleman was going to go to find, I think it may sound specific enough to say like small business owners who've had at least 15 years, they're looking to like maximize the value of that to potentially sell it in the future. But then when I ask, okay, where do those people hang out? The answer is they don't. Like you have to get more granular. Okay, are these people that actually that generate at least $1 million a year in revenue per year? Okay, if that's true, there's a couple private clubs for people at that level. There's EO, Entrepreneur Organization, is all over the globe,
Mhm,
and you have to have a business. You have to be a business owner generating at least $1 million a year in revenue before you can even join. And there's other programs like that, and so that's somewhere where he could focus on going to that group and specifically get finding a way to add value to them, just offering to do some sort of free training.
mhm,
I was just at a conference, and so I knew Mike. I did this every time I go to a conference. I go to conferences not just for the speakers, but usually for the people in the crowd, and often this time because I know my target customer is there. So I just went to a conference called Craft and Commerce, and while I was there, I was just talking to people in the crowd, getting to know people, genuinely building relationships. And we'd be talking, and I'd realize that someone was like my target customer. I just start asking them more about their story, and then offering to chat. And I filled my pipeline with leads from people at that conference. And specifically, I'm trying to remember exactly how many. I believe I sold five, either 4 or 5 seats in my current coaching program directly
mhm.
from people I met at that conference. And it's a $10,000 coaching program. So
Wow.
me spending a few $100s to go to a conference where my target customer was worth every penny and all the time. And sometimes that's what you got to do. Sometimes you have to get clear on like who's your target customer and where do they hang out, and then just go do that. Now, some people would say, "Well, hold on a second, John. The whole point here is that I want to make money while I sleep, and you're saying I have to leave my cozy home office and go travel to some conference and actually sell to people?" And the answer is yes. You have to do the stuff that doesn't scale first before you can build something that scales. And
That's good.
yeah, I mean, Paul Graham from Y Combinator, he's really the one who says that to startup founders who are raising millions of dollars, and they're talking about, okay, how are we going to launch? And he always tells them the same advice: do things that don't scale. Start by making one sale to one customer on a Zoom call, and no, it doesn't scale, but you have to do that to refine what you're selling, to get to refine the product, to get to know the target customer, because you want to avoid. I mean, startups, unfortunately, are just a graveyard full of companies that didn't get to know their target customer and they just raised a bunch
Mhm.
of money and launched big campaigns and it just failed. Markeith, are you familiar with the story of Juicero? Maybe I may have told you about this one before. Are you familiar with it?
I don't think so.
So it's a startup company. You can look them up. They raised, I believe, it was over $100 million in funding. It was a lot of money, and they launched. This was probably at least 10 years ago now. And they launched this big, giant machine that goes on your counter at home, and it was called the Juicero machine. And they said, look, the future is green. Everybody on the planet is going to be drinking green smoothies for breakfast all the time. And so that's where we're headed. And so we're building this $600 giant machine. That was their core product. So you buy this machine, you put it on your kitchen counter, and it makes green smoothies. Well, how does it make green smoothies for you? Well, you have to buy protein packs from Juicero. And the protein packs cost like $10 or $15, and it's this like squeeze pouch type thing. You put it in the Juicero machine, and it like squeezes it out and mixes it up with some water and gives you this like beautiful, green juice for breakfast. Only one problem. Bloomberg bought one of these machines and then said, hold on a second. And they took some of the $15 protein packs and they squeezed them in a cup and then mixed it up with water and a spoon and had the same exact result. And so they wrote this article about this saying, like, hold on a second. This machine doesn't really do anything. It's just a $600 machine. It doesn't actually solve a problem because you don't even need the machine in the first place. And understandably, Sales plummeted. The company ended up going completely bankrupt, and now you can buy little keychains at the Juicera machine just to commemorate how horrible that startup launch was. Stuff like that happens all the time, and it's because they didn't do the stuff that doesn't scale first.
They didn't do the stuff it doesn't scale first. And so as I'm listening to this and I'm the person who's okay, I'm ready to jump in. I'm understanding what John is talking about, but I don't know that I have the expertise. I don't know that I
Mm.
can really help anybody. I don't know what it is that I know that somebody would want. How do I get past that?
Well, it may be helpful that I have 4 children. This may be one of my benefits of having 4 children is I'm constantly reminded at just how much I know that they don't know. Because there's basic things that my 7-year-old, 6-year-old, 3-year-old, and 3-month-old just don't know how to do. And so I'm constantly reminded of this. And so I think the first thing I would just encourage you is that like the goal is not really you don't have to be the Nobel Prize winning, gold medal winning peak in your industry to create something useful online. You just have to look at your life experiences, and I try to break things down. When I say like turn wisdom into wealth, I try to break wisdom down into a combination of 2 things: knowledge and experience. What do
Mm,
you know, and what can you do? What have you done? And those 2 combos really form wisdom. And so it can be as simple as looking over your own, past, your history, and your free time or your professional time, and just making a list of what things have you done, what things have you learned.
right.
Um, Sometimes it's helpful, and this is why it comes back to the target customer, to just sit down for coffee with somebody who's maybe kind of vaguely interested in what you do, but doesn't, and just say like, hey, it'd be really helpful for me if you just ask me questions. And
Mm,
really quickly you learn what, because they're going to ask questions, and you're like, well, that's obvious. Because the curse of knowledge is that the more you know, the harder it is to remember what it's like to be a beginner. And so that's why you have to spend time with amateurs to actually get to know what the gap is essentially between what you know and what they know. I mean, Markeith, right now we're on a podcast using Ecamm Live with a fancy Zoom setup. Like, there's so many things right now that are going on that the
yeah.
majority of the people on the planet have no idea
No idea.
how
Yeah.
no idea how this works. Um, so I mean, I think that's the first thing. One of the things that I love to look for, you can't always do this, but one of the things I love to look for is just like, what are people asking you? Like,
Mhm.
I was resisting for a while being like quote the online course guy, but then I started thinking back to like, okay, the last time some like distant acquaintance reached out to me out of the blue, and it was like the last like 5 times that it was like somebody from college or somebody I knew from a job 3 years ago or whatever, and it was almost always someone saying like, hey, I'm thinking about launching an online course. What do you think about this idea? And they were and I didn't think anything of it at the time, but or people, sometimes it was a book launch or whatever, but people reach out to me about these things, and I realized like, oh, this is how I'm perceived, and I started just leaning into that a bit more. So that's something else. But like, what are the annoying things that your friends or family ask you to fix for them? Is a good litmus test for what are you actually really good at?
That's good. That's good. Woo! There's so much information we can't pack it all in.
Of course.
But as we're, talking about turning wisdom into wealth, you were about to lead into before I kind of delved into the mindset stuff around,
Mhm.
types of products and things that people can create after they get past some of their mindset things and decide, okay, they're going to take the leap, make the journey. Now what type of products can I create from my experience, from my skills, from my expertise that would
Yeah.
be appealing for people to purchase?
Yeah, so you really only need 3 core products. Now, of course, we're gonna fast forward to, like, your completed business. You don't have to build all
Mhm.
3 at once. I just wanna say that
Right.
up front. But you really only need 3 core products: your gateway product, your membership product, and your flagship product. Now, a gateway product is a painless purchase, something that allows someone to kinda come into your world, to get a taste of what you have to offer, to get some sort of value in their life, and to become a customer who can engage in purchase other products that you sell. A book is probably my favorite example of a gateway product. It's, typically about $10, and it's, really, really high value. But it's something that it doesn't cost someone a lot of money to get to learn a lot from that, to become wiser for it, more effective, and solve a problem in their life. But you could also have a low priced course or workshop. And I say low price, it's relative to the other products. So I have gateway products that go all the way up to $500, anywhere from $5 to $500 is a good price range for a gateway product. But it's meant to be a one time purchase that's typically pretty painless for your target customer. A membership product is something that allows you to provide ongoing support and value to your target customer, and in exchange, receive revenue in terms of automatic, recurring, monthly, or annual payments. Recurring revenue is awesome for membership sites, but we'll come back to the button, I guess, in a minute. There's a lot of downsides to membership sites too, and I say that as someone who's launched six-figure membership sites, who's scaled seven-figure membership sites. I love them, but there's some downsides too. The third category, the flagship product, this is sort of your all-in total transformation. Like, what does it look like for someone to really, essentially, to apprentice under you, to get the best of your insider knowledge? So, Markeith, you've been through my flagship program, the
Mm.
coaching program that you went through. Is a 3-month coaching program focused on helping you launch your own flagship product and scale that.
Mhm.
And it's kind of meta because my flagship product's about flagship products. But the point is, that itself is my best training, my best content. It's where most of my energy goes. And it's also where most of my revenue comes from. But a gateway product is a phenomenal way to grow an audience where you're not just building an email list, you're building a customer list.
Right.
And so I love creating a flywheel where every dollar of revenue that comes in from a gateway product is immediately reinvested into getting more customers. And that just creates this natural virtuous cycle. So just there's a lot of ways to do that. The most simplest example I can share with books is that I don't make much money on my books, but what money I do make immediately goes back into Amazon ads to sell more books. And so I'm never like paying the bills or the groceries with my book money. It's just helping me sell more books because the goal of that is just to get more customers.
Right. So
Um,
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. I appreciate that. Can I
So
share a little bit about the most common mistakes people make though? Because I think that might be
yeah.
helpful.
Well, go through those three again. Those three
Yeah,
types of
yeah.
products.
Yeah, so gateway, membership, and a flagship. Now, from a customer's perspective, once you have a completed business, that's probably the typical journey is they buy a gateway product and then they upgrade to buy a membership product, and then eventually they might buy your flagship product, but only a small percentage of the customers ever do. But the reality is if you're building this from scratch, I recommend you actually start with the flagship first.
Hmm.
What I've seen a lot of people, the kind of natural human instinct is like, oh, if I'm going to start an online education business, let me start by coming out with a $7 book or a $25 workshop or $50 course, $100 course. But the problem with that is that it's really a volume game. To make any sort of meaningful amount of revenue, you have to sell a lot of them. And
Right.
so you end up stuck in this cycle where you're at the bottom and you don't have any traction, and you end up, working really, really hard to sell your gateway product, and you suffer death by 1,000 ebooks, where at the end of a year or two of just like slogging away, you've made $7,000 and you go, wow, that was really hard. I don't want to do that again. And so
Mhm.
that happens a lot is people, the death by 1,000 ebooks. And the second mistake people make is they start with a recurring revenue product. And that's where you get into what I call death by membership madness, that the minute you start a membership product, it sounds nice to have automatic recurring revenue. But the
Right.
problem is it's actually, it's a problem and an opportunity. But in today's market, we have subscription fatigue. I mean, you're
Mhm.
subscribed to Netflix and Disney Plus and HBO, sorry, Max and X, Twitter Blue, whatever, like you're subscribed to so many things in everyday life that there's people are reluctant to add another one to the list. And so you have to
Right.
overcome that when you sell a subscription product. And but the problem is though, the first time you sell one subscription to your membership product, now all of a sudden you owe the full experience. And so your membership site is upside down, just like you can get upside down in a house where you owe more than it's worth. That's how memberships start. And so that's also a volume game. With a flagship product, if you're charging maybe $2,000 for a 60-day group coaching program, for example, if you get 5 people to say yes and buy that, and you give them the best of your training and your knowledge and expertise, that's $10,000 in your pocket. That's a meaningful amount of money from a small amount of people. And it also allows you, even more importantly, it allows you to collect amazing case studies and testimonials of people who have gone through your program and seen those results. And that's what's going to allow you to sell your other products, candidly. It's the proof of people who've taken your advice. So I'm a huge fan in selling your flagship first, and then your gateway, and finally your membership. But if you follow that sequence, if you follow it the way that I teach, then you can actually build a seven-figure school where you're building $1 million in revenue from those 3 core products with just those 3 core products. And I've seen that over and over again in totally different industries. So I think it works pretty well.
Amazing, amazing. So, are you ready to create your $1 million online education business? Hey, I want you to type in the comments and let us know. Yes, yes, because it is possible by following the things that John is talking about. I believe I'm on my way. I believe
You
that
are.
I'm going to follow that model, but you have to do the work. You
It's true.
have to do the work. I want to end today's episode with this, John, and that is you got to talking about pricing.
Hmm.
And sometimes that's a mindset thing too. How do we really learn how to price our flagship gateway, so on and so forth, because a lot of people have challenges sometimes with pricing things according to what the value is that they
Yeah.
provide. And they have a tendency to think the cheaper, the better, or the more people who will be willing to buy. But I was reading just the other day, a young lady was sharing how it wasn't until she went more premium that she really started to have more buyers than when she was trying to sell things less expensive.
Markeith, I'm going to ask you a question to answer your question, which is just entertain me for a second and just uh I want you to pretend like you just got some bad news and you actually have to have a pacemaker installed in your chest
Mm.
to keep your heart moving. And it's going to happen this Friday. So really soon you're going to get a pacemaker installed. You have two choices. Do you want the $50 pacemaker or the $5,000 pacemaker?
I want the $5,000 pacemaker.
Exactly. You know nothing else about it except for the price. But when it matters, right? When the problem that this product is solving matters, you want as the best you can afford. So much of pricing comes back to the core question of what problem are you solving? Because if you're solving a problem that is not, I mean, obviously not everything's life or death, and you don't need to exclusively solve life or death problems. But if the problem you're solving is not important to someone, then of course it's hard to come
Yeah.
up with a price.
Hmm.
And of course, it's hard to price a premium accordingly.
Hmm.
I will say one of the in my book Survive and Thrive, one of the frameworks that I get into there for pricing, I guess I covered in both my books, is what is my favorite framework for pricing, but it's still as much art as science. Like there's no strict formula for pricing, but it's I try to create a product that has a 10x return on investment, which
Hmm.
means that if I'm going to do something for someone where I'm going to, I mean, obviously, it's probably simplest math in financial products. So if I'm saying, hey, I'm going to help you earn $100,000, then I feel really good charging $10,000 for that. And the person who goes through that experience actually walks away and takes action on that and gets those results. They're going to be grateful for it too. And so it's a win win. Everybody walks away happy. Now, obviously, there's a lot of things. If you're not in a financial, if you're not either helping people, make money or save money, then the math isn't as explicit, but the math is still there. You could still dive into like if you're helping solve a marriage problem or a fitness problem, whatever that might be for someone. Get clear on like, okay, what is the what alternatives are they currently paying for to not solve this problem, or maybe to try to solve this problem, whether that be therapy or fitness programs and personal trainers, things like that. And then the other question is, what's the cost if they don't take action?
Mm.
What's the cost if they don't? And that because that's a cost that's often overlooked. It's like, what's the alternative if someone does not take action?
Right.
What happens? Now, if the answer is if they don't take action and they don't buy my product, nothing happens. They build a better product and solve a more important problem. Is the first thing I would say. But going back to the marriage example, if the alternative is that there might be some sort of situation of like divorce, well, that cost is astronomical. I mean, there are strict financial costs in terms of like attorneys and just like the fallout of a divorce, the cost of therapy for yourself and your children. But there's also just the fact that like a marriage is broken and gone forever, and that's priceless.
Hmm.
And so whatever it is that you're doing, you got to get clear on like what is the alternative, and that should help you figure out some sort of ballpark dollar value, and then say, okay, I can charge 10% of that. Now,
Awesome.
for a flagship product, I do recommend a starting price of $2,000. So everything I just said, let's put that aside for a second and say, okay, that means you need to solve at least a $20,000 problem to charge $2,000. But that's my starting price typically for flagship products.
Wow. Wow. Well, this is just a little taste of how to build a thriving online education business. But, John, I want you to, before we leave, share a little bit more about your two books. Which one should we get first? And then share a little bit more about yourself and how we can stay in contact with you.
Thank you so much. Well, the first place I recommend you start is actually I have a free crash course. So it's a Sell Your Smarts crash course in how to turn your wisdom into wealth by building a thriving online education business. So everything I talked about today, but in more detail with resources and templates, you just go to sellyoursmartsonline.com. You get 100% free access to that. And in there, I also walk through and do introduce you to my books when they're relevant, of explaining like this book is good for this book is good for this. So honestly, I'd recommend you start there if you're not sure which book to get, because I'm going to walk you through specific exercises in that free training, and you'll know, okay, if you need help and you want to go deeper here, buy this book. So I'd recommend actually just start there, sellyoursmartsonline.com.
sellyoursmartsonline.com. And then, of course, you have your programs. And hopefully, I can get an affiliate link and I can send people to your program and maybe make a little commission. I don't know.
We'll sort something out. We'll sort something out. But yeah, if you want to know about my flagship product, my more premium coaching program, then ask Mark Keith and he'll introduce us and we'll take it from there. Because I only take on 10 clients at a time. So it is fairly exclusive, but I'm happy to work with the right people.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, John, I want to thank you again for joining us on the Maximize Your Brand podcast. Such valuable information. I've learned even more today, even during the interview, and, to reinforce all the things that I learned in the program. And so hopefully those of you who are listening, you will take advantage of going to the website that John mentioned and to learn more about how you can create your own thriving online education business, just leveraging your skills, your expertise, your experiences, so that you can live the life that you crave. For those of you who are joining for the very first time, we want to invite you to subscribe to the Maximize Your Brand podcast. You can go to Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, wherever you like to listen to your favorite podcasts. We would love for you to subscribe and join us.